Kelly and welcome back to my channel. I'm here today to film my March wrap-up. I managed to read 4 books last month, and actually considering everything that was going on, that's not too bad really. The first book I read was Half Lost by Sally Green. This is the third and final book in the Half Bad trilogy, which is about a boy called Nathan who was born into a white witch family basically. His mother is a white witch, but his father was the most notorious black witch who is well known for killing other witches and eating their hearts in order to consume their powers. He's the most powerful witch there is. So he's the only half code, that's what they dub him. He's half black witch, half white witch, and he grows up being very closely watched by the Council of White Witches because they're not sure which side his loyalties will fall on. Will he choose to be a black witch or a white witch? Plus, they see him as the first of his kind, so they kind of want to experiment on him really. He sort of spends a few years in a cage, he goes through a lot of dark stuff. This is quite a dark trilogy. And actually, I remember really adoring Half Bad. I think I gave it, well, between 4 and 5 out of 5 stars. It was a few years ago, but I really enjoyed it. And the books sadly have gotten progressively worse, a little bit sort of lazy, I feel. There's quite a lot of internal monologue going on, and it gets quite repetitive, especially in this one. I feel like the trilogy could easily have been a duology. And this one I gave, in the end, 3 out of 5 stars. I still enjoyed this trilogy overall, and I really recommend it if you fancy something that's very, very quick to read but with some good character growth. You spend so much time in Nathan's head and he is really an interesting character. The ending hurt a little bit, but for all that it didn't live up to the promise of the first book, I still do think you might want to check out this trilogy. Next, oh, also I should say that this is actually set in modern day England. There just happen to be witches, which I quite enjoyed. Then I moved on to Wintersong by Jae-Jones, and some of you may know that I was really anticipating this because the first time I heard about this it was being pegged as a Labyrinth retelling, and I love that film. But then it was sort of, people corrected themselves and said it was just inspired by Labyrinth, and I was still really interested. So I started reading it, and I have to say it took me a while to get through this one, and certainly a long time to get into it. It's about a girl called Liesl, or Elizabeth, and she's born into this musical family, and she's kind of overlooked. She's, on the surface, the least remarkable of her siblings. She has a younger brother who is a violin prodigy and a younger sister who is very beautiful, and her mother is also beautiful and was a celebrated singer, and her father, though now a drunk, was a celebrated violinist. And everyone's attention, particularly her father's, goes into her prodigy of a brother, even though her brother's genius is really enhanced by the fact that Liesl is a composer, like a divine composer of quite wild music, because it's inspired by these misty memories she has of a childhood spent playing in the Goblin Grove with the Goblin King, who she remembers sort of constantly proposing to her. And then at some point she decided to sort of forget about the Goblin King and forget about her own dreams for herself and focus herself instead on her brother and helping his dreams to come true and helping his talent to grow. And you don't find out why that was until much later in the book, and it's quite, you know, it's not a big thing, it's not sort of this massive reveal, but it is sad to find out why she felt that she had to just tamp down this core, major part of herself. So Liesl's psychology is actually quite complex. She's such a complex character that it's hard to get close to her, and in fact I didn't really get very close to any of the characters, but I will say this: the ending to this book means that I will absolutely pick up the sequel, which there are rumours of a sequel to this, and I hope it picks up from the end of this book because I need to know what happens next. The Goblin King in this was, again, hard to get close to, but I think that was kind of justified. Like, the Goblin King should be this mercurial, vicious character, really. But he was fascinating, so I think that was well done. And actually the writing in this is really good, the descriptions are really good. I think there could have been less of it could have been cut down a little bit. Oh, and I should say, the editing in this book is appalling. Like, Jae-Jones should have words with her editor, because there were so many very obvious mistakes in this. And when I say so many, I mean about 6, but those are just the ones that I spotted. There shouldn't really be any. So, yeah, that I did not appreciate that. But I really didn't think I was going to care about any others in this series, if it was going to be a series when I was reading this, but then the end just sort of, now I actually can't stop thinking about this. The first half was definitely a lot more enjoyable than the second, because the second is where Liesel's psychology really starts to come into it, and she's just so twisted out of shape, and so, yeah. Also, this does have content that really is not good for a younger readership, so for older teens or new adults, I would say. Then I read, oh, did I say I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but it's more like a 3.5 stars out of 5. Next up, I read the Encyclopedia of Early Earth by Isabel Greenberg, and usually I don't read coloured graphic novels because I find them a bit visually overwhelming, but this isn't like a Marvel comic. The colours in this are quite muted, and actually they were perfect. I really, really loved the art in this one. And it's one of the rare examples where the illustrator is equally good at storytelling, because you know, this book is all about storytelling, particularly the oral tradition of storytelling. It's stories within stories within stories, so the effect of it just snowballs the more that you read it. And it starts off with a man and a woman meeting, but they cannot touch, so instead he tells her a story. And I should have counted how many there were, because the stories just branch into others, into others, into others, but they all share this common thread of this storyteller. And very near the beginning there's a story of 3 sisters who find a baby, and they each want to raise him as their own, so they have a shaman split his soul into 3 pieces so that he can have 3 bodies and there can be 3 babies. And the stories are all really interesting, especially the ones about the gods. There's this bird god who has 2 children, and the language in this is very, very relatable. For example, at one point the son of the god tattletales on his sister by saying that she's shacking up, his words, with a human down on Earth. And I actually laughed out loud a couple of times in this. It's wonderful. And it's not like anything I've ever read before. I'm going to be really interested to pick up her most recent graphic novel, which I've heard is even better than this. And I think that one is called 1,000 Nights of Hero, maybe. But yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. Then, yesterday, because it's so short, I read Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. This wasn't quite as good as I was hoping. Oh, I should say, actually, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. This one I only gave 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but it's more like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I actually have not read a 5-star book so far this year, so I'm looking to break that streak soon, I hope. This is about children, or well, young people who go to, not fairy tale worlds, but other worlds. It's like in this book there are the equivalents of Narnia and Wonderland, and there's this home called Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, where they are brought to help rehabilitate them and help them integrate back into normal life, because their parents think they've gone a bit loopy, when in fact they're just desperate to find the rabbit hole back, or the wardrobe back, the doorway back to what they now consider home, because in some cases they've spent years growing up in this other world, and that is now more real to them than this world. So I think that is a fascinating concept for a book, and I still think that. I just think that it's too short. There is a sequel that's coming out in a couple of months, but it actually it doesn't continue on from this one. It's more of a prequel story, and I'm a bit disappointed by that, and I'm probably not going to pick it up in a rush for that reason. I would have liked to just carry on following these characters, actually, in this, you know, in a consecutive sequence, because there's some interesting people in this, and they talk about the geography of the different worlds. And also, instead of north, east, south and west, you've got basically a compass that is built on worlds that are called things like high logic worlds and high nonsense worlds. And that is how they, when the main girl in this, Nancy, she's the new girl at this school and she's just baffled by these terms, but so is the reader. I actually think the book could have, I'm just checking there isn't one, the book could have really done with some sort of map of these worlds, some sort of compass, and they actually talk about some of the characters in this creating that map, but I would have liked to see it because I found the sort of, it's not literal geography, but the I'll say geography of these other worlds a bit confusing, but the whole concept is still fascinating. So I would love to read more in this series. It doesn't seem to be going where I want it to go. Also, in this book, there's a murder mystery, and I knew who it was very, very soon. Well, straight away, really, because there's so few characters that are really expanded on. And of course, well, I won't say that because that might spoil it. But, so I did enjoy this, and it was a very quick read, but I was a bit disappointed also. So those are all the books I read last month, and I'm hoping to do better this month because I've got the Easter holiday coming up and hopefully I'll have some time to get some good reading done. I do feel like I'm back in the swing of reading, but I'm in the swing to the detriment of everything else because now I just want to sort of sit there with a book and not do anything else, and of course I've got assessments so I have to do something else. So let me know if you've read any of these books, and if you have, what you thought of them, and if you think I'm sort of misjudging them in any way, like should I be looking at them from a different perspective, because I mean certainly Wintersong, I feel like maybe I could enjoy that more. Maybe I'll enjoy that more on a second read. Anyway, for now that is everything. Let me know what you read last month and chat to me down in the comments. See you later guys. Bye.